Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I think you can hear me. Hey, beautiful souls. This is Damon Speaks. Welcome to the Damon Speaks Show. You're seeing me on Bernard Damon Holcomb YouTube. You're seeing me on Bernard Damon Holcomb Facebook, and you're seeing me on the Bernard Holcomb professional page. If you are still connected to those Damon Speaks pages, it's no problem, but all of my content will now be coming through me. It's Bernard Damon Holcomb. I'm all the things. I'm really grateful that you are tuned in tonight. I think you're going to enjoy tonight's show. First, I would just like to say thank you again for all the love, all the prayers, all the gifts that I've been getting in the mail, all the care packages that I've been getting in the mail, all the outpouring of support. I thank you. And I love you, and I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Like, I already knew that I was loved and appreciated, but it never hurts to really be shown that I am loved and appreciated. A couple thoughts that I had this week. I just did a meditation because I get extremely nervous before going live. So just to calm myself down, I did a little meditation. And the guy was saying, well, what do you want? And he was saying that we all want to be happy. And so what does it take to be happy? It can be difficult to find happiness when we're searching for happiness. In my experience, though, there are certain things that we can do to produce more happiness or just become more aware of the happiness and the joy that are available to us. One of those things is acceptance. Like, to be able to accept where you are in this moment, right now, even if it may suck, even if you're in the midst of a breakup, even if you can't pay your bills, even if you're going through some health challenges, just to be able to accept in this moment that this is where you are. Just because you accept it doesn't mean that this is where you have to stay. But acceptance brings peace. Contentment also brings peace. So I want to offer to you that we should practice. We may not all get it at one time. Practice acceptance. Practice looking for the evidence. There's evidence all around me that things are going well and that things are always working out for me. There was evidence all around me that health was coming my way, even in the midst of battling with coronavirus. By the way, I'm feeling much, much better. Last week, I had to postpone tonight's show because I just wasn't feeling well. I ended up going to the ER, and I didn't get any treatments, but they confirmed that I had no blood clots. They confirmed that I didn't have any pneumonia. It was just COVID was attacking my lungs, and it was affecting the oxygen levels in my body, in my blood, but they came back to normal. And since then, I have been feeling better and better and better. The second thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly is authenticity. I did a video today, Monday Motivation from Damon Speaks, and I was posing the question, what would it be like if we created a world or a space where it was cool, where it was preferable to be authentic on social media? I have often struggled with finding a niche. I have often struggled with finding what my thing is. I know it's general positivity, but I think that I want to start leaning more in the direction of vulnerability, leaning in the direction of really telling my life story and inviting people to come into my space and onto my platform. Hey, Obi, thanks so much for tuning in. I love you. Really leaning in the direction of telling my story. The story of this young man that was bullied mercilessly in elementary school. The story of this young man that has struggled with weight for most of his life, that has struggled with his sexuality, that has struggled with self-esteem. And for me to come into this place where I am now, for me to overcome and for me to still be overcoming is a powerful story. So I want to invite you to join with me and become more authentic here on social media. If you want to come onto the show, if you just want to have a conversation, I'm so interested in doing that with you. So reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. Tonight's guest is Sebastian Armendariz. I was led a few weeks ago to start having conversations with my friends and people that are connected to me about their journeys with cancer. I think the holidays is a weird time to be talking about something so heavy. However, there's somebody out there that's going through it, and there's somebody that's going to get some relief and get some joy and get some information about testicular cancer because of tonight's show. The beginning of the show is a little wonky on my end because I was on Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi right now. I don't know if you guys can really see me or if I'm clear. I hope I am, but we press on. So here we go. I'm going to introduce Mr. Armendariz. Enjoy the show, and I'll see you after. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Sebastian Armendariz.
Hi.
Hey. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming. Tell the people a little bit about yourself.
So I am a tenor and actor. I'm originally from New York City. Originally from El Paso, Texas. Oh my gosh, I've messed up my own introduction. So I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I'm currently living in New York City, in Harlem. And that's me in a nutshell.
How was the Harlem life? When I first moved to New York City, I guess it was 7 years ago now. I started out in Brooklyn, then I moved to Washington Heights, then Inwood, and then I ended up in the Bronx. But I've always loved Harlem. I sing at a church in Harlem. What is it like to live and be in Harlem?
It's incredible. I mean, I feel kind of, it's interesting though, because I moved to New York at the beginning of the year. So I moved to New York in the beginning of January of 2020. And I know people are like, oh, okay. and so I had about, exactly. So I had about 3 months to get my feet underneath me. And in that third month, I actually moved to Harlem. So I originally, when I moved here, I was in Astoria, Queens. And then I moved to an apartment with a fantastic performer and friend of mine. Well, we didn't know each other at the time, but he's since grown to be a huge friend of mine. Spending months together during a pandemic will do that for you. And as soon as we moved in March 15th to our apartment in Harlem. And then the next day, everything shut down. So what I can speak to living in Harlem really is the time that I've lived in Harlem is really throughout the coronavirus pandemic. And so what I can speak to as far as living in Harlem is the resilience of the people here, and as soon as things started to get a little bit better in July, August, seeing people come out people were wearing masks all the time, coming out to the parks, supporting each other. The families and the neighborhood of Harlem stayed together. It didn't. I mean, you hear so much. What I find it fascinating about living in Harlem and living in New York as a whole throughout this whole thing is people talk about you a lot. And I found the same. I lived in Chicago for 3 years, and people in the other parts of the United States. I did my master's in Chicago, and I lived there for a few years. And people like to talk a lot about Chicago. They like to talk a lot about Harlem, but they don't. When you live there, you realize that they don't really know.
No.
Right.
All they know is what they hear or what they see in the media, but they don't know the people. They don't know the streets.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with the Bronx. People talk about the Bronx all the time, and I was scared of the Bronx. I'm from Detroit. I was scared of the Bronx. Since I've been here, I feel safe. I have a community. I love the Bronx.
Right, and I think that's something that people don't. I don't know if they don't see it. They certainly don't hear about it. But that word community, that's really what you can find. That's what you find in these boroughs, these neighborhoods. You can, if you try, you can really find a community, and it could be. For me, I remember I played basketball. I remember the first day they put the hoops back up on the park that was like right next to my apartment. I remember feeling like a little kid, and I would go to the park, and there's a community at the park. You know what I mean? And there's people you can meet and friends that I have now because of going to the park and just getting to know people. So if you try, if you're new to these places, you can become part of a really resilient and welcoming community.
I love it. I love it so much. So part of the reason we're here is to talk about your journey with cancer.
Yes.
What type of cancer did you have?
So I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And so the exact type was a pure seminoma. We found out later. But I was diagnosed a year ago, last November. Actually, 2 days ago was 2 days ago was the anniversary of the surgery that I had for it. So that's what I was diagnosed with. That's the cancer that I had.
So, what sent you to the doctor? Did you know that something was off,
Mhm.
something wrong in your body?
Absolutely. So when I was 18, I was taught by my doctor how to check, how to check for testicular cancer and other ailments when it comes to, for men, their testicles and scrotum and all that. And that ended up making me aware, checking myself, once, twice a month in the shower. That made me aware when in October I was actually on contract in Indianapolis. I was covering the Marino in their production of L'Elixir d'Amore, and I noticed some abnormalities from one of those checks. And I made a mental note of it. And part of me thought, well, it's probably nothing, right? Just let it be. And so what ended up happening was after that contract, my plan was I was going to go home to my family, moved to Minnesota from El Paso. My family's in Minnesota, Minneapolis right now. And I would go home to Minneapolis for the holidays. I would move to New York in January. That was the plan. And while I was home, I told my parents that I'd felt this. I have a very open relationship with my parents. And so I felt very comfortable talking to them about this. I said, I'm feeling something. It hasn't gotten away for a month. I came home late November. I got to a doctor, and that process toward getting diagnosed started.
What was the process toward getting diagnosed? Were there many appointments?
Yeah, well, it was a whirlwind. I mean, it it was so. I was in Indianapolis. I drove to Chicago. I mean, just to give you a sense of how quickly this happened. We wrapped and closed L'Elixir d'Amore in Indianapolis. The next day, I'm taking a lesson in Chicago. The next day, I'm in Minneapolis seeing a doctor. Right. I'm and the part about my story that I think is will resonate with people and I think is most interesting is that I was uninsured. This happened in the 3-4 months of my life where I was uninsured. So I turned 26 in August, came off my parents' insurance, and even though I had been employed, I was uninsured. So it was tough, but so I had my first appointment with my doctor, like my primary physician, and my primary physician told me, oh, in my 25 years of men coming to me with issues, it's never been cancer, right? So you're gonna be fine. But he said, but there is something, I feel what you feel, which is always nice to hear from a medical professional, that you're not crazy, that they feel what you feel. Cool. Love it. And so um, he sent me to get an ultrasound. So I'm pretty sure that same day, because I was on the phone like mad. I was on the phone like, no, you get me in there now. I was
Right,
like,
right now.
absolutely. And so I went and I got the ultrasound, and then I went home and I went to bed. And then I was woken up by a phone call, and it was my primary physician. And the phone call started in a way that I hope nobody ever has to have a phone call with a medical professional go. He goes, "Is this Sebastian?" I say, "Yes." And he goes, "Hey." One of the ways I've coped with this is humor. I know we're talking about cancer, but I try to find the funny moments in it. You never want a doctor to say "hey" at the beginning of the phone call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get to that a little bit later. The frame of mind you have to be and like how humor
Absolutely.
can. Okay, go ahead.
So he told me there was a mass that they saw. And so he said, we're going to send you to a urologist. And so I went to a urologist. So right in that first day, I had 2 appointments, and I had a conversation with the doctor that said, we're going to send you to a urologist. It could be cancer. If it's cancer, you're going to have surgery to have it removed. And so right away, it's like, damn, you know. And so my dad knew, my mom knew, but the rest of my family didn't know, right? and so that urologist appointment in the next week was then the following week that's when I was diagnosed. That was the day that I got diagnosed with testicular cancer.
And so to sit across from a medical professional and for them to say you have testicular cancer, like what's the first thing that went through your mind? How were you feeling in that moment?
I mean, it's a lot, you know. There's so much wrapped in it. Yeah, I think I remember. I'll give you I can't pinpoint like a first thing, right? Because one of the first things was, how much is this going to cost? Honestly,
You're uninsured.
because I'm uninsured. That's one of the first things. That's one of the first things is how much is this going to cost? Other things that pop into my head are the big, I call them anvils, the big things that kind of, you know, like Wile E. Coyote. If you look at them, it's going to fall on your head and crush you, right? So the big things are, am I going to have kids? Because I want to be a dad. I want to be a good father. I want to have kids. And so that's the big thing. Am I going to be able to have kids? Yes or no? Which they can't really say, right? They have no way of knowing if unless you do a test, which, like, in my position, doing extra tests or doing extra things is out of the question because, you know, any extra costs have to be kind of cut out, right? So there's that. Two, it's like, how is this going to affect my own security in my own masculinity, which in my life has been pretty secure, but this is a direct assault on that. And that's led to some tremendous growth in the last year. But up front, it's like, whew, you know, it's like, damn. Okay. And the last main thing I remember thinking is, what's the recovery process like? Because this is audition season. You know, this is November, December. I have 2 flights, you know, in 2-3 weeks. I have auditions in Minnesota. I have 2 flights to New York. I had at that time about 9-10 auditions lined up.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the recovery process like? Because I think I'm Superman. I think I can go into surgery and come out the next day and then go sing "A Mes Amis" in front of, you know, in front of whoever, right? And so those were the big things that were in. How does this affect me personally? How does this affect future me as far as my children? And how does this affect my career?
If anybody's listening that's not a classical singer, that doesn't know about that is make it or break it time. That November, December period, what it used to be. I don't know what it'll be like post-pandemic, but that's when you audition for people. That's when everybody comes to New York. You shake hands, you kiss babies, you sing for everybody, come out with some contracts. But to miss that is really scary. So, okay, once you were diagnosed, what was the journey toward treatment? Like, did they say it was just surgery? Did you have to do any kind of chemo or?
Yeah, so this is where the fortune starts to come in.
Come on, fortune.
Yeah, come on, exactly. Come on, fortune. So first off, it's the most treatable cancer there is, right? So like, and yeah, well, I mean, you know, I don't know who's making like a listicle of the top 10 treatable cancers, but like it's up there, right? But that's the number one thing. The second thing is that we caught it really early, right? So those 2 things in itself really were fortunate for me in my cancer journey, and that is still ongoing to this day. The third thing is that the surgery, we had it very soon. I mean, I was a fiend on the phones. I talked to about every receptionist in every clinic and a hospital and surgery center in Minnesota, right? So they said they wanted to do the surgery as soon as possible, and I was like, can we make it sooner, right? And so it was literally like I got diagnosed, and then it was Thanksgiving, and then the next week I had December 3rd, 2019, I had my surgery. And that's from me just calling people and saying, I don't care where it is. I don't care where it is. Put me wherever there's a slot, you know, get this doctor to, and wherever we go. And that's, you know, call after call after call. And you know, people in the Midwest are very nice. And if you try hard enough, a lot of the times they'll try to make stuff happen for you. So that was I forgot the question, but I hope I answered it. But that was the trip to surgery, and then we had the surgery, and then I had about 3 some weeks of recovery.
So,
Oh, you asked about chemo. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Very, very luckily. So if I had had the procedure been diagnosed, I don't know exactly the timeline, but earlier in the medical tradition, they would do what's called preventative chemotherapy. So you would get chemotherapy no matter what.
mhm.
Now, thankfully, they don't do that in cases such as mine. So when I got my scans come back, they saw some things that they were kind of worried about, but they weren't to the size that they had to do chemo. And so they said, we're going to keep you under observation. And
Okay.
so, that was with a meeting with an oncologist after the surgery. So like you have your main doctor, you have the person who's doing your ultrasound, you have your urologist that's doing, the diagnosis and the surgery. And then you have a separate oncologist that you go to check the scans and your blood tests after your surgery happens. And then after that, you have to have an oncology team that's just looking at you,
Ah,
So these are all people that are essential to your journey, but when you're uninsured, that adds up. That adds up.
Sebastian, how did you pay for this?
And this is really what I'm excited to talk. Not excited to talk about, but this is really what I want to talk about with you. I am incredibly fortunate in that I had family and mostly friends and community members do the terrible American tradition of GoFundMe, right? I had community members. I had, professors, teachers, friends, their parents, people in the opera community, people from my high school, people from my college, people from my grad school, people from all the times of my life come together and chip in to help me out. And we were able to raise basically the exact amount of money, not to cover everything, but the amount of money that I had saved to move to New York. So essentially what it saved me from was having to spend my entire savings that I had saved up for my move to New York. And it really kept my dream alive. And that's a beautiful thing. And that
Absolutely.
is something that I am eternally grateful for. But for me, what I want to get across is that for every one of me, there's 10 other artists that go through this. There's 10 other people that go through this who don't have that. How many dreams, how many careers, how many have been lost because of something that is out of their control, a biological glitch, right? And how many voices have we not heard? And that's what I can say here, and I can sit here and say I'm very fortunate and go me, right? But I am in the position where I have to say I am fortunate, but it is a problem that other people aren't. It is a problem that this is great for me, but what about the people who don't have this? And not that it was easy, right? Because that was just the amount that I had saved, but there was still more. I think I just finished paying a bill like a week ago, and that's it's on my own. So
I'm really taken with the idea that there are so many people that have left this earth because of something that was maybe even preventable or treatable, entirely treatable, but because they didn't have health insurance, they weren't even in the mindset where they would do a check.
Right.
Like, because they didn't want to know, because they didn't know how to deal with a medical issue.
Right.
What do you think is the best thing that this country can do to prevent these deaths and to take care of every citizen?
Well, the easiest thing is to make the medical system more equitable. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, okay, I'm not a politician, but I have some thoughts. First of all, the fact that we're the only developed country that doesn't have universal healthcare is a tragedy, and it affects the industries that we most adore. Right? We cannot raise young artists. We cannot raise, young creators if they are afraid of for their lives or have to live on the razor's edge in order to just get by, right? Now, I'm all for drawing from struggle and using that to fuel your art. I'm all for that, but it's not a necessity. It's not a necessity. We don't all have to be me, right? We don't have to all be dying of tuberculosis to make something beautiful. That's not how this should work. So universal healthcare is the first step, right? And then we have to build trust in our communities of the medical system, because for a lot of communities, specifically Black and Brown communities, there's not a lot of trust there, and rightfully so, So you go both ways, right? You treat the money side of it, and you implement a universal healthcare. You get rid of predatory, honestly, private health insurance, and then you work on patching up a lot of the societal trauma that has happened between marginalized communities and the medical community. That's how I go about it, And then my story, you don't need a GoFundMe page, right? Then I'm not a story. I don't want to be a story, right? I don't think, but I didn't, when I was open about this and my diagnosis, because I was very open about it, and I didn't really do it, because I did it because I was like, I don't want this to be a thing that I hide, right? Because I feel like it just gains more strength in the shadows. And so I just decided to tell people kind of off the bat and keep them in the loop.
Open,
yeah, very open.
I'm a firm believer that because a cancer diagnosis is obviously not easy, right? And so there's a stigma, and there's guilt, and there's shame, and there are all these weird emotions that come up about it. And I think that they are only strengthened with any issue in our lives when we try to hide it, and the shame grows, and then we just feel like we can't talk about it. Have you always been that way?
I've never been shy. I mean, yeah, I think to some extent I've, in a way, always been that way. Being more comfortable with being vulnerable is part of my growth as an artist and as a person. I take a lot of pride in reflecting on my habits and my actions and my mistakes, and trying to come correct. And I also want to, I know that I thrive because of my connection to my people. So like, I can only do what I do because of my relationship with my family. Right. So, and that extends to the people who become close enough to me that I basically consider my family. And so that's where that comes from. I didn't do it. It really wasn't until I came to New York and had met some good friends of mine who are opera singers. And I had a good friend of mine, and he told me, he goes, I don't think you know how much it means that you came out and said all of this stuff about this diagnosis and your journey about it. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, a lot of guys just wouldn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I wasn't doing that I didn't understand that or fully appreciate that part of it. But I got messages throughout this past year from men. What did you feel? How did you do this? What did you look for? I'm worried that this might be X. I've had this problem for months and months and months, and they just didn't feel comfortable about talking about it.
Yeah.
They didn't feel comfortable, not even with their doctor, not with anybody. And that speaks to a lot of stuff. That speaks to how we treat masculinity in our society, and that speaks to, how we engage with our doctors. That speaks to a lot. But I didn't understand that me coming out and saying, "Hey, this is what's happening to me," would be effective for anybody. I was just trying to, I just didn't want people to worry, right? Or like just people to know,
Yeah. So if it's possible, I would love to pause here for any guys that are listening and talk about like the physical aspect, like what you were looking for, what you felt, how you felt, what we should be looking for, maybe even how to check ourselves on a regular basis.
Yeah. So there are guides online as far as the physical process of checking yourself. It's best to do in like a hot shower. You should check yourself at least like once a month. But what you're looking for, is bumps, any bumps or any changes in like texture or even hardness. Like, you know, I joke about it, but it's like I know my boys, or knew my boy, right? Like, and so what I felt personally was that the testicle that had cancer was harder, right? There was no give to it, which is really difficult to kind of feel out. You know what I mean? It's like it wasn't a bump. It wasn't anything the more typical. It just felt like a frozen grape, whereas normally it feels like a ripe grape, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I felt. And so you have to check in, because if you don't check in, you don't know what to compare to. So because I had been checking myself
for years,
I was 18, and I felt that, I said, that's not how it normally feels. And I said, okay, let me give it some time. And then when I checked a month later and it was still the same as it was, I went, okay, something's up. So there are guides online to show you that like show you visually how to do it. And I really hope that people seek it out. Movember is a great organization and they have some resources on it if you just want a place to start. But if you go to, also talk to your doctor about it, if you have a doctor. If you don't have a doctor, which a lot of people don't, there are plenty of resources online to help you with the process of doing it on your own.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think that there are people that are watching that are going, their lives are probably going to be saved because you're open with your story and you're telling us about your experiences. Like I just put out a notice online saying, hey, if there's anybody that has a friend or someone that wants to talk about their journey, please like contact me. And then a mutual friend of ours, like we didn't even know each other, mutual friend, like this person. So because you shared your story and she knew your story, then you can come to another platform. And I hope that you can just continue to talk about this and to help people.
Thank you. And I do, and I want to keep paying it forward because that's the least that I can do, right? Yeah. The least I can do is take my fortune in the community that allowed me to keep my career and pay that forward and be able to chase my dreams. And I can also talk about this on the side. You want to know something, Damon? Like, I had a conversation with my parents because before, we didn't tell the rest of my family until after the ultrasound, right? But I had a conversation with my parents before any of the ultrasound or the meeting with the doctor happened or whatever, right? Conversation went something like this. We were talking about whether or not it would actually be a cancer diagnosis. What are the odds? Pretty low. Although testicular cancer is the most common cancer among men 15 to 35. Not a lot of people know that. It's the most common cancer among men ages 15 to 35. So a lot of young men get this. And we were just talking about the odds. And I asked her the very sincere question. I said, Mama, if this comes back and we have to do this testicular cancer thing, I asked her, I said, is it best for us not to treat it right away? Is it best for me to move to New York, get a job with health insurance, and then do treatment? Like, is it worth, like, is that something that we should talk about? She almost knocked my head off my body. She did not want to hear that. She did not want to hear that. But what I'd want to avoid is that conversation ever happening again. Nobody should have to have a conversation where they get diagnosed with something that is treatable, that is preventable, but that can lead to long-term ill effects, and have to say, I have to postpone that because my financial situation. That should not happen. No one should have to say, maybe I shouldn't get my cancer treated until I have insurance.
Yeah.
So those are real conversations that people have. Those are real in the United States. That's distinctly an American conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it should not be.
It shouldn't be. No, it should not be.
Did you have a sense of spirituality, of the universe, of things working in your favor, of fortune before this? And did that change through your journey, or did it stay the same?
I feel I have a deep sense of connection to my fellow people, right? I have a deep sense of connection to my family. I have a deep sense of connection to the communities that I'm a part of. I have a deep sense of connection in trying to help people when I can and
Mm,
trying to better myself in order so that I can better help or create for people. My spirituality or my faith is in general terms, I wouldn't say it's how do I say, it doesn't exist in conventional terms in that
mm,
kind of way.
mhm,
And it's hard to tell, to go through this and to tell people that, because a lot of, and I don't knock anybody who has a very strong faith at all,
mhm,
at all.
mhm.
For me personally, it was easier for me to go through this experience with my connection to my friends and to my connection to my family and to the people around me. That is what I gained strength from.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I can say that my spirituality didn't change through all of this, but that my connection to my fellow man did. That's what strengthened. That's what grew.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you for being open with that because that is
Yeah.
a difficult conversation for a lot of people
Oh,
because
absolutely.
of people and their beliefs and them imposing their beliefs on
Hmm.
others. But I think it's beautiful because there are people that are very religious or that
Hmm.
have belief systems that don't feel that same connection to their fellow man or woman
Hmm.
or to humankind.
Hmm.
I think that that's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful way to experience life and to really go through your journey.
Yeah, and I want to say that for people who are spiritual or religious, I absolutely understand that that is a source of comfort, that is a source of connection, that is a source of community, and I'm in no way disparaging that. That is
Mhm. Absolutely.
absolutely 100% valid. It's not where I found my strength during my journey.
Yeah.
For me, it's much easier to think that. For me, it was much easier to say this is a biological glitch in my body that I'm taking care of in the best way possible, and the
Mhm.
people around me are around me to help me.
I absolutely believe that there should be room made for everyone and for everyone's story,
Mhm.
which is part of the reason why Damon Speaks exists. And so I just think that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me,
Mhm.
outside of being a spokesperson or just talking about how we need to have universal healthcare, everyone should be covered. How has this changed your life? How has this changed your perspective on life? And how is your life different since going through this experience?
I mean, first, I mean, how it's changed my life is it for the first time in my life, I've had to be aware of my health, right? Before this, and still, I guess now I'm healthy. So I guess I should say that for people to know. Like I'm in observation here. I have a oncology team here in New York, and my observations have come back clear so far, and I don't expect them to change. But it has put some different priorities in my life, right? So I have to put taking care of this first before other aspirations. And not that they've replaced the aspirations, but the aspirations have had to take different forms, right?
Mm, mm,
So so in concrete language, those auditions that I had to cancel every single one of them. Every single one of them. So I knew that 2020 was going to be a year for me to move to New York, get my feet underneath me, get first of all health insurance,
How
find a
did
place to
you
live. So I got it through my job. So I found a quote unquote survival job that's fantastic, great community of its own, and that offers health insurance. So and it has afforded me the ability to have an apartment and to pay off my bills, right?
Come on, job.
Right, exactly. And then so that has to, whereas before, stability schmability, right? If I wanted stability, I would have gone to law school, right? So that was never the first. I found joy, I found meaning in being unstable, in being constantly in transition, in going from Minnesota, Wisconsin to Chicago to Indiana to Florida to, you know, as you very well know, like moving and making moves. Whereas now it's like, okay, I have to, let's set down some roots because in New York, and let's try to find some ways to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it changed for me in that kind of concrete sense. Another way that it changed for me is that things can change, stop of a dime.
Yeah.
Right. Drop of a hat. I almost said drop of a dime. That's mixing up two sayings. But things can change very quickly. And so how you spend your time, you know, what am I putting my time into? What are my priorities? How do I want to express myself? And that it changes your perspective. It changes how you want to, what you want to build, how you want to use your creativity. So it's been a crazy year. I mean, it's been I think year on year. I mean, yeah, right. Isn't that the understatement? Right. I feel bad. Because here's the thing, right? I knew that this year for me was going to be rebuilding. I knew that I wasn't going to have any contracts. I knew that I would probably like skip this audition season, which I did as far as the operatic world is continued. But I didn't want everybody else to have, you know what I mean? I wanted everybody else to get, you know, their contracts.
Everybody along with you.
Right. I wanted it, you know.
Thank you.
So, but I was very, very fortunate when I moved to New York in the first few months that I was here to find a job. I got representation and like things happened very quickly. And then is like the whole world collapsed. But I think what that allowed me to do, you know, going through the pandemic in New York, kind of being in the epicenter of it and still in it. Right. I mean, I hate talking about it in the past tense because it's still going, you know. What it allowed me to do was to have the time to stop and reflect and really sort through everything that I had just been through and really untangle it, you know, and that's difficult. And it kind of, I needed the time. I needed it to get to where I'm at today. And it's still a work in progress, but I really needed that time to figure it out. Not figure it out. It's not like it's a puzzle, but it's a relationship, right? You have to grow strategies and relationships with these experiences that you have so that you can cultivate them into something positive.
Absolutely. Speaking of positivity, like what brings joy into your life? I know you're a singer.
Yeah.
You're through this whole process, through this pandemic, through 2020. Are there things that are surprised you that you found that you love? Is there something that you found that you're doing differently that bring you joy? What sparks joy in your life these days?
Man, I mean, my best friends will tell you that I have a very, I don't want to say addictive personality, but I find something and I just hone in on that one thing and I just kind of squeeze all I can get out of it. So for me in this, I mean, I took up, so writing has always been there for me. I've always written. And so I wanted to, this whole year, even before the pandemic, I shared a lot of my poetry, some of my poetry on my Instagram page. And I've stopped doing that for reasons that will come to light later probably next year. People will see what I'm cooking up. But writing has always been there for me, you know, poetry, journaling. But there are some things that kind of grab hold of me. And one of them was technology. I'm a huge gamer, but I've never been like a PC gamer. And in the summer, I've always wanted to build a gaming PC. And in the summer, I think I watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of like technology videos and just learning everything I could about like the PC world and you know, different components and how to build a computer and all of that stuff. And that is something that's taken hold of my life. And so that brought me a lot of joy in tandem with streaming. So I stream on Twitch and I started that in late July or late June. So building that community brings me so much joy. And that is a mixture of creativity, of interaction with other people, with creating a community and singing and also video games and my friends. And it's like, that's what gives me joy. It's an amalgamation, much like opera is. It's an amalgamation of all of these things that bring me joy. And right now, I mean, if I were to say something besides all of that, what I just said that brings me joy, I've really gotten into chess. I have gotten into chess before Queen's Gambit came out, but I love Queen's Gambit. Don't get me wrong, great show. But before it was like the universe stamping its approval on my new obsession, because I was the same way I was with technology videos. That's how I was with chess videos. I was like watching what's the new opening I'm gonna learn today, and all of this, like, what I gotta work on my middle game. All my friends are like, hey man, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm playing chess. And they're like, you're what? And so those are some things that bring me joy. Those kind of small hobbies that I've gotten to really dig into. But then also, they're the always constant things, like, your friends, your family, singing. Oh my God, singing brings me, sometimes, it's a roller coaster ride for me sometimes, and I'm sure for a lot of singers out there, just staying on top of it. But then you get back into the practice room and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yep, this brings me a lot of joy.
Was your singing career and acting career super duper important to you? Like, were you like, I gotta get it, I gotta get famous, I have these goals? And did that change after this? Did it become less important in some way?
Oh, it's always been important, and it still is. I'm not going anywhere. I told one of my best friends this. I'm like, I'm in a cocoon artistically. Like, as far as the opera world is concerned, I'm in a cocoon right now. I'm doing different things, but I'm still honing. I'm still learning. I'm still perfecting my craft. Yeah. But it hasn't left. If anything, it's broadening.
Ooh, I love that.
Right, because it kind of has to. So I'm getting back into getting in touch with, I started out acting. I didn't start out, I sang in choir, but I really was more of like, I was stronger at acting and dancing than I was at singing. And so I'm getting back to that a little bit, mostly because that's really what's kind of out there right now. There's a lot more acting jobs in New York than there are singing jobs.
Absolutely.
So if anything, that is what is happening to my aspirations. There's broadening, they're taking different shapes, but they're not disappearing. This is going to sound really corny. I don't know. I'll just say it, because for me, it's very true to me, and people can take it as they will. But for me, there's always been this sense of, and I've talked to other artists, this is something that we talk to with each other, but nobody ever wants to say it loud. So I'm just going to say it out loud, right?
Yeah.
For me, there has always been this sort of sense of inevitability, right? And I don't mean inevitability that inevitably I'm going to become world famous, but that when I keep doing the work, and I keep, taking the opportunities that are in front of me, and I keep growing, inevitably something great is going to build and going to come out of it, right? And that's the feeling that I have, and it doesn't put it on the back burner, right? It's not that my aspirations as an opera singer or as an actor or performer is on the back burner, but it has to take some time now to gel, right? It has to kind of be in the oven for a bit, and while I make sure that my health is in order, once my health is in order, and once I feel comfortable about it, we'll go back to making a lot of moves. Yeah. But for right now, it's I'm finding the ways that I can express myself within this kind of cocoon.
Listen, when you talk about like being in a cocoon and like things cooking up, simmering, like it's like kind of like a pot of chili. You make a pot of chili, say it's good. That second day though, after just being there, it's delicious.
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I just think it's beautiful. I think that your journey is beautiful. I love the word broadening. I love that word because there are many of us that suffer artistically. There are many of us that suffer in our lives because we're not willing to be broad. We want to be narrow because people have told us in the past, that you can't do several things well. You have that one thing. You can only be an opera singer. You can only sing one genre. You can only be in this one Fach or whatever. And so we get stuck in that, and we don't know how to get out. But 2020 has taught us that we have to be broad. We have to open up. And I love the fact that I think that when you come out of this, that your artistic life is just going to be so much different, and you're going to have, not that you didn't before, but you even have even more to pull and to draw on.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're acting and you're singing these life experiences, Absolutely.
I think if anything, it's taught us, well, it's taught me as an artist several things. That one, you have to be ready for plans to change, right? You have to be ready to switch it up, and you have to be adaptable, right? And perseverance. Like perseverance isn't a rock. Perseverance is water, right? It's flowing. That's what it's taught me. So just because it looks different or it's taking a different form doesn't mean it's not the same. Doesn't have the same substance.
Absolutely. Oh, what advice would you give to someone who may be afraid that they are going to have a health issue, or just afraid in general of 2020 and things changing? How would you encourage them?
Oh man, and it's the one thing I would say is, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to feel your emotions. It's absolutely okay to feel however you feel when something like that comes up. And the one thing I can say that you should not be afraid of is to reach out and lean on somebody else. It is okay to lean on other people, right? Even if they have to lean back on you, this is where we come back to community, right? If everybody's leaning on each other, nobody's falling down. Everybody's leaning on each other, nobody's falling down. It's like that one terrible group exercise that everybody sits in each other's laps in a circle, right? And everybody has to commit to it in order for it to work. But I think those are really the two things that I would say is it's okay. It's okay. It's scary. It's really scary. It doesn't have to be scary, but in the time that we live in, and in the structures that we have to operate within, it's okay to be afraid, and it's also okay for us to reach out and get help and strength from other people, because this pandemic it shows us really why having insurance tied to work is inhumane. Because we have this thing that comes in that wrecks our bodies and has shut down jobs.
Yeah.
So when you connect those two things, and now you have this unique, well, not really unique, but this virus comes into our lives.
Yeah.
It just shows how inhumane that is. What it really tells me is that you are only worthy of keeping your bodily form. You're only worthy of being healthy if you can produce something. And what kind of message is that? What are we telling ourselves? That's what we tell each other every single day as a society.
Yeah.
And so if you lose your job and then you get sick, hell yes, be afraid. It's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
It's not weak to be afraid, but it is also not weak to lean on the people who do care about you for help.
Yeah.
It's because I can't sit here and say, oh, good vibes only. No. I can't sit here and say, just think about something better and it's gonna. No, you need people around you. You need people around you. And so that's what I would say. I mean, I get really heated about this. I really do, because I don't like that. Nothing changed from me as a person. I didn't change from November and December of 2019 to March of 2020 when I started my job. Nothing changed about me. I didn't become more talented. I didn't become more deserving of care because of my job. All I had was insurance. That's it. Right? That's the only thing that changed about me. And so But that's the difference. That's the difference. I was even employed up to the point, you know what I mean? Like I was a working singer. Still, I mean, I still am. I shouldn't say was, right? But like at that time, I was working as a singer. I was getting the contracts, right? And so for people who are coming up, who are right now in university and conservatory and starting their young artist track, this is something that for me was the furthest thing from my mind, right? As I approached the age of 26 and was going to come off of my parents' health insurance, or for people who are in college and they don't even have health insurance, right? These are things that slowly start to become more at the forefront of your mind. And if they aren't, you kind of have to start thinking about it, you know, because it can change everything in a split second.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. The thing that I resonated with the most, I always, I am an advocate for vulnerability. I believe that vulnerability really is our strength, and the ability to be vulnerable and the ability to be open in that way just affords us a life that we wouldn't necessarily have.
Mm-hmm.
And I also say that it's just okay not to be okay. You know, it's okay not to constantly be positive, and it's okay to lean on your friends and your family
Absolutely.
you can trust.
Absolutely.
I believe that.
Absolutely. I think that the best thing we can do for ourselves as far as cultivating a healthy mental, right? Just a healthy mental state is becoming good friends. And I really do mean that, like becoming good friends with your emotions. Every single one of your emotions. You have to like hold them. You
Mhm.
you have to hug. Like it just sounds so corny. It sounds so cheesy, I know. But like you have to hug your fear. You have to embrace your insecurity. You have to, you have to spend time with your guilt, right? You have to you have to do this. And the more you do it, the more you realize that there's nothing to be ashamed of in those feelings. That those feelings, they make you you can grow from them. They can
Nothing to
strengthen you.
be ashamed of, nothing to be afraid of. They're actually gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's so hard. And I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I don't think a lot of men in America have this kind of conversations, you know what I mean? About their emotions. And I know we're both artists, and artists are I don't think we're inherently wired differently, but I think in our craft, we find value in delving into these sides of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think this is what we have to. Going back to me wanting to be a parent, and wanting to eventually have children. Like these are the kinds of things that we need to be teaching at young ages, right? And that way, when boys grow up and they don't have to feel like toughness is the only way they can be, that
Mhm.
hardening is
Mhm.
the only way they can get by.
Mhm.
I think we'll see a lot of issues that we struggle with as a culture, as a society, start to change.
Yeah.
Hardening will make us crack.
Mm.
Hardening makes us crack.
I love it.
But the heat, the heat that we get from being malleable and emotional, that can make us stronger.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
I think too many people are trying to be hard or teach, and in a lot of ways, that's how you get through. I just got done saying, like, if you don't produce, basically we tell you as a society, if you don't produce something, we don't care. So how can you go through a society like that and not be hard?
Mhm.
Like you kind of have to be. So
Mhm.
this isn't just like a one-stop shop, one-step solution. Like this isn't just, it has to, it is a, if we want to have men who are open and vulnerable, we have to we have to cultivate a society that rewards that. We have to have a society that rewards that.
Yeah.
We have a society that says your life matters no matter what, no matter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That you don't have to produce, that you don't have to be a certain race, that you don't have to be at a certain class, you don't have to be at a certain education level, and your life matters.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can have the men that we want to see. maybe we can have people be more open, be more vulnerable. Because right now it's like, if you're not hard, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna get hit with something harder.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can we find you?
You're welcome.
Out for?
I think the easiest way to find me is through my Instagram, Sebastian_Armendariz, and then you can also check out my website. It's sebastianarmendariz.com. If you are a fan of video games and have trouble sleeping at night and we want something like a late night, we have a great community over on Twitch, and that's at Sebastian A_gamer at twitch.tv. So that's all. That's where you can, those are the main places that I'm active now. And from there, you can find links to other places I'm connected, but those are the main places that you can find me. As for what's coming next, you know, I want to post, you know, some singing stuff. I want to get back into posting some more stuff on my YouTube. But you know, I'll let, hopefully when people follow me, they'll see what's coming up.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Sebastian, again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Damon. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Join us next Monday at 8 p.m. Right here on YouTube and Facebook for the Damon Speaks Show. I love you guys. You know what I always say. Keep your head up. And now you can hear me. That was really awesome. Thank you again, Sebastian, for coming in to speak to the people about your journey here on the Damon Speaks Show. I appreciate each and every one of you. Listen, YouTube has been rocking with me tonight. Thank you, YouTubers, for tuning in. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. Welcome to the Damon Speaks Show. Welcome to the Damon Speaks universe. You'll be seeing a lot more content about motivation and encouragement and positivity coming your way. All right, guys, I hope you have a fantastic week. Look out for more things coming from me. There may be a potential video podcast or just a podcast, because what I love about YouTube is that it's so open, it's so easy to share, and it's easy to expand my audience and expand my influence. So anyway, sending lots of love your way. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Let me cue up this video. I love you. Keep your head up.